Hi, and welcome everyone to today's session. I would personally like to thank the participants and you for joining this webinar. My name is Miranda Simmis, and I'm a product owner and gemologist at Everledger. And I'm really excited to introduce our panelists. We have Clemens Link, Head of Development at Goobelin Gem Lab. I have Charles Lawson, Director of Lawson Gems and Responsible Gemstone Traders. Monica Guishi, who's the founder of AGEC Africa, and Susan Wheeler, founder of the Responsible Jewellery Transformative and Susan Wheeler Design. It's a pleasure to have you all here today.
Thank you for having us.
Those who may not know what Everledger is the digital transparency technology company. We were founded in 2015 with a vision to enable businesses to bring greater clarity and confidence to marketplaces where transparency matters most. Today, we are talking about one of our many initiatives we have produced. This one is in partnership with Goobelin, focused on coloured gemstones, and is called Provenance Proof. Before we get started, if you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question box in the Q&A box. We will answer as many questions as we can at the end. Please be mindful that this webinar is public and is being recorded, so please don't share any personal information. And once we're finished, we will share the link of the recording to all the participants via email. Okay, let's get started. Clemens, if you could take the stage now and talk through what Provenance Proof Initiative is and how it came about. Is Clemens on mute?
Is it better now?
Yes, we've got you now.
Sorry. Thank you very much. And also thank you very much, Miranda, for inviting me to this webinar. So you asked me about the Provenance Proof Initiative and its beginning, right? So that was about, I don't know, maybe something like 4 years ago, where we felt that end consumers and also brands actually, they requested more information about the gemstones they hold in their hand than a classic gemological laboratory could give them. So it's not only, they don't only want to know things about the quality, something we can read out of a gemstone by looking at scientific data, but they were also interested in, let's say, the story behind the stone. So they wanted to know more about the responsibility, about the mining conditions, but also about the working conditions within the entire supply chain, actually. So it was topics where, I don't know, responsibility, fairness, sustainability, like in other brands as well. And at the same time, when people bought a gemstone in a shop, the vendor might have told them actually something about the gemstone, or might have linked it to some initiatives somewhere in the mining area, but there was no proof. There was no proof that this gemstone is really related to that story, even if it's a nice story. So if there's no proof behind it, no trackability and transparency, it will not create trust, actually. And actually, on the other side, we were contacted by, or we knew a lot of miners, mining companies, and also associations and cooperatives who actually went for the extra mile, who invested in more fairness or sustainability. And they had a nice story to tell, but they couldn't tell the story in a very convincing way that their story is really attached to the stone while it goes through the supply chain all the way to brands and jewelry houses and the end consumer at the end, who would like to hear the story. And this is where we stepped in as a Goobelin Gem Lab, actually, and we said, okay, let's turn it around. We will develop technologies. We will develop technologies which enable this provable trackability and create transparency, actually, in the market, in our industry. And this was actually the beginning of Provenance Proof, to be honest. And this is the umbrella we decided to call. And we thought we have to develop physical tracer, physical tracking methods, such as the emerald paternity tests, where tiny particles actually can be injected into the gemstone, into the rough gemstone, rough emerald at the mine site already. And these particles are unique and they stay attached to the stone throughout the supply chain. So you can cut it, you can treat it, you can polish it and mount it in a jewelry piece. You can after all still extract the particles and find out what the true source was. So you can find out the true provenance actually. And then at least you know that the stone is attached to the working and labor and sustainability conditions there. But quite early, actually, at the same time, we also thought that cannot be all, and we should develop something digital to a digital tracking tool. And this digital tracking tool, we have always had in mind something like a log, digital form of a logbook for each and every gemstone. And you can start it wherever you want to. You can start it in the mine, actually, that's the best thing you can do. And then you pass it on. You pass it on together with the gemstone. And once it comes to the next stakeholder, the gemstone, the digital logbook has to be transferred to this person and he has to write his own chapter. So at the end consumer actually, or the jewelry brand or whoever's interested who holds the stone in his hand also has a nice record of what has happened and what have people told actually. And this was the beginning actually of the provenance proof blockchain. We understood quite early that if you want to create something that looks simple and that is simple and simple to use, normally the technology behind is very complex and not simple at all. So we figured out quite early that if we really want to make it successful, roll it out and have a boom there, that we have to partner with a company that really knows how to treat this technology and knows what they're doing about. And this is obviously, otherwise we wouldn't sit together here, Everledger. So all together within this provenance proof, I think in the beginning of 2019, we rolled out provenance proof blockchain. It's live since then. It's applied on thousands of stones and many companies and single users and ASM miners and so on are registered, are using it. I think we are hearing some very nice examples today. Maybe 2 or 3 keywords about the blockchain. It's free to use for everyone in the supply chain. It's kept, the usability is very straightforward. You just register once. You don't need to download any software. You don't need to install any app. It's all web-based, the application. That means you sign up, then you log in, and after that you have your inventory and you can upload and trade and treat your gemstones and upload your story to that as well. Yeah, I think that's a very quick introduction.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Now I'm going to jump to Charles and Monica. From your experience in the field, particularly with ASM, how traditionally has the mining industry operated, and maybe some insight into the role of males versus females in ASM from your experience?
Do you want to go first, Monica?
Charles, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess traditionally, I mean, I think women probably don't get the credit they deserve just because often it's sort of working in the background. I mean, working for so long in Madagascar, you don't normally see the women dealing with the big stones. Most of the female traders will be working with the very small pieces, but it's also not uncommon, when you go and see a bigger male trader, you'll see the wife standing behind him. So they do still take a role, but I think in the more sort of trading side of things, usually it's a bit more behind the scenes because it's not sort of culturally accepted to have the woman being the face of the company or the face of the business, I guess. Whereas in the mining side of things, I think a lot of it just kind of comes down to the physical strength required for some of the mining versus the dexterity required for other sides. So you'll have the men going down the holes, digging the holes, whereas you'll have the women, they're actually sort of sifting and sorting through the stones, actually sort of doing the recovery process. So, it is quite nice sometimes when you'll see sort of whole families working together and each will have their role, quite well-defined roles. And yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to the actual work, there's segregation, but it's segregation that's logical. Like you're gonna send the big bulky guys down to dig out the holes, and you're gonna put the women with the keen eyes to actually find the stones.
Yeah. Yeah, Charles, that's true. And I guess as you've defined it, especially when it comes to the actual digging, since most of the ASM miners don't have equipment, so you find that the men will be the ones digging up and shoveling the stones, and the women will do the panning, the cleaning, and the sorting of the stones as their roles. Before, for many years, you did not see women owning these mines, but with time, with increased inclusivity and discussions of formalization of artisanal miners, we are now seeing women owning the mines themselves, but they'll still employ the men to do the labor. And they'll do the sorting and sifting and, supervision to ensure everything is working right. I think what is interesting, and we'll discuss later, Miranda, is when it comes to the market front, where you'd expect if the woman is one who was sorting and cleaning and has seen, what are the clean stones, they'd be able to come to the market with that stone. But what we've seen on the ground as well, as Charles has defined, when it comes to negotiation and presenting the stone to the buyer, the women still take a back role. Even if they're the owner of the stone, they still want to give that stone to a man to haggle and get a prize. And I think this is because traditionally, I don't want to say bulldozed, but I think that's the case where men have made them believe that they haggle better for the prizes. So we saw this particularly in Tanzania, where it took a lot of convincing to tell the women to put their stones on the table, and they have the capacity to negotiate. But of course, that came with a lot of training as well, where GIA had to train them on gem identification and gem valuation. So by the time they're presenting their stone, they're also confident on what they're coming to sell. But it also took a lot of encouragement for them to haggle. It was also very unfortunate where we had to, really encourage some of them, where they'd bring their stones and still look for who's the person and the man who's going to ensure they get a good price. And when the buyers did not actually want to hustle or really negotiate for prices, they did not want to propose the price themselves. So asked, how much are you selling your sapphire? The lady will say, give me your offer. Same question to a man, how much are you selling your sapphire? He will ask for the highest price possible, even when they know the stone on the table is low grade, And I think this is some of the dynamics of, as we talk about blockchain, that we need to couple it with a lot of training on the ground for the miners and capacity building to be able to interact with these new opportunities that the platform is going to present.
Yeah, agreed. It's interesting that you say that the women take a back seat from your experience, because in Vietnam, I know that the women take the front seat when it comes to the negotiation, and they're the ones that handle the gemstones at the final stage and the sales stage. So it's obviously very much a cultural and geological difference that we're trying to obviously allow blockchain to enable change. Clemens, do you see provenance proof helping solve some of these problems?
Yes, of course. I think we all do. But why does it help, or how does it help? Actually, that's a very important part. Maybe that's one of the most encouraging parts for us to work with the blockchain and to work on the blockchain. And that is, well, first of all, let's say you're in a cooperative or whatever mining association you work in, and you have a story to tell. Actually, you have a story and if you have a story to tell at the end, it can also add value, right? And it can also create value, and part of that value then can come back to you, or it can also financially help you after all. That would be the ideal situation, right? And so first of all, of course, as mentioned, it creates provable trackability. That means if you have a story and if you say a story, at least you can ensure that your story is securely and safely attached to the asset, to the gemstone. The second thing is of course the visibility. I mean, you make yourself visible. The blockchain has the advantage that you, at the beginning, you write your chapter yourself. That means not anybody later in the supply chain tells your story and maybe changes your story towards what he or she wants to say, but it's you at the beginning, it's you writing the chapter. You decide what's inside. You don't only decide what is inside, you decide which material you use to show what you want to say and how you want to say it. And after that, you can ensure that nobody afterwards has the chance to change your wording and your message, actually. And this leads directly to a third point, and the third point is the potential for direct marketing for you. That means once you told you, that means you have a platform actually to tell your story in a very easy and convenient way, with not much, how should I say, marketing, digital skills. You're already able to upload rich data, you're able to upload, you're also able to create awareness for your story by uploading material you really think is underlining actually what you want to say. So you have direct marketing. Direct marketing is always good, and it's for free in this case. And last thing I would like to mention is that through provenance proof, not only through the blockchain, but through what we're doing right here, for example, too, what we do together, all of us together do create, and what is very valuable is that we create a network of like-minded people, so mainly B2B in this case. And this is very valuable. For example, I mean, we created a billboard where people who are on the blockchain or who are using traces, that they are signed up, that they are visible. That means the moment you have stones, you can make yourself more visible also for the people on the other side, for the people who search for stones with such a story behind it. This is, well, I'd say, yes, definitely, we do support actually initiatives that have a very special and a very good story to pass on, that have a message actually.
Fantastic. Monica, you've worked with Moya Gems and the Women of Tawama. What was your role, and what are your thoughts on how provenance proof has enabled change?
Yeah, thanks, Miranda. So in the Moya Gems project, I worked as a consultant and as a researcher for Everledger, where my role was to interact with the artisanal miners when they came to the marketplace and be able to capture the stones that came to the market and put them on the blockchain. So those who might not be familiar with the Moya project, this is an initiative by PACT. PACT is an NGO down in Tanzania, which is actually anchored initially on supporting artisanal female gemstone miners in Tanzania. And the idea behind Moya Gems was to promote responsible sourcing and access to markets for female artisanal miners, where PACT went to the various villages in partnership with the Women in Mining Association, identified women miners who were dealing with gemstones, were able to give them training, and this training was not on, was in partnership with GIA, where they trained them on gem identification and generation. They also trained them on other issues on environmental safeguards, occupational health and safety at the mines. And one of the key issues, of course, to most of artisanal miners, not just women, is access to market. So the project does not stop there. It also, partnered with international buyers to bring them down to the villages in Tanzania to buy directly from artisanal miners. So they get international gem dealers to come directly to the villages in Tanzania. They bring the artisanal women miners to meet with these international gem buyers and use the skills they were trained with by GIA on what are the gems they've brought to the market, what's the value of their gems, negotiate for fair prices with these gemstone international buyers, and sell their gems. And so my role in that project was to then capture the transactions that were happening at what we call the marketplace, the Moya marketplace. Initially, what we had anticipated and how it should have worked is we wanted to be able to build the capacity of the miners themselves to enter data into the blockchain and teach them how to use the platform itself and enter the data themselves. But what we realized, because of course, the capacity of the miners to be able to interact with the blockchain technology, there's also the issues of infrastructure, as Clemens mentioned, that this is it's not an app, it's web-based. and we're out in the village, that means you must have a smartphone to be able to load this platform on your phone. Then there's the issue of internet for you to load this, and the market happens in a remote district in Tanzania. So we've been piloting this and finding more creative ways of doing data entry, but because of those challenges, then I was doing and assisting the women and doing it together, uploading their stones onto the blockchain, discussing and, getting for them to understand what the blockchain is, what is the value of having your stone on a blockchain platform, fundamentally, how is it different? And the reasoning behind the Moyo market is to promote responsible sourcing, where you have, the dealer coming as close as possible to buy from the miner to ensure fair prices are passed on to the miners. And for the miners, it was to understand that it's important for the people who are buying their stones. They want to carry the story of the miner. The consumer is a bit more woke and doesn't just buy a stone anymore. The consumer also wants to know who mined my gemstone. Want to ensure that the people who mine the gemstones and the gemstones they're wearing, there are no environmental, environment issues were not, were safeguarded. There were no human rights issues in mining that stone. There was no child labor involved, and to carry that story and to preserve that story is what responsible sourcing was all about. And this is what the blockchain was coming to assist with the vetting that has been done and ensure that the stones that are being bought are assuring the end consumer that this has been responsibly sourced, and to be able to capture that and ensure nobody changed or altered that story of who mined that stone and what is the other, what are the other stories that feed into that stone. And that's what the blockchain was coming to do. And I think what was, what really caught the attention of the miners is somebody was interested in knowing who mined their stone, and that story of who mined their stone was going to be preserved throughout the value chain. And when it was going to become when it was going to be mounted and become jewelry, the pride of this stone was mined by a certain Mama Salma or a certain Bahati in Tanzania will be preserved in that jewelry. They found that, it was a new way of doing business for them. It gave them a lot of pride as the miner that the story of who mined the stone will be carried along, and blockchain was going to preserve the provenance that this stone actually came from Tanzania, and this is the person who mined that stone, right? We are also working and discussing with the Valeja team of other value-added functionalities where we are hoping along the way, carrying that story of who mined your stone, we can extend the functionality to be able to tip back the miner. If you're buying that gemstone and it was mined by a certain miner X, and now you know who that is, can you tip back the miner and show your gratitude? So these are some of the other new areas we're trying to explore of what further the blockchain can do. But I think that story of safeguarding provenance and really enhancing responsible sourcing down at the ground and being able to do it at the village level was really a different way of doing business that the women appreciated at the marketplace at Moyo Gems.
Yeah, and obviously, as pointed out by one of our participants, obviously there's a transferable skills through this process with them also learning formats of IT and photography that they may not have previously been exposed to. So it's it gives them a whole new avenue.
Yeah.
Thank you. Charles, you have an initiative with Women in Madagascar. Are you able to tell us a bit more about that one and where Provenance Proof has stepped in?
I think Susan's just got something to say. She was just putting her hand up while I have a quick word.
Oh, no, I was just going to, I wanted, when we were talking about stories, I wanted to read something that was written by one of our miners at, in Zambia that you can put up on the blockchain as well.
Yeah, perfect. Do it.
Okay.
Let's see what they want.
Yeah, Pauline Mundy, we're lucky right now to have Pauline running the Zambia program, the Zambia project. And so she's doing a lot of information gathering for us. And a lot of the miners, you know, we've asked them to tell stories. And Kennedy is one of the miners that just has been selling a lot and brought a lot of really beautiful material. I think he almost sold out of all of his first round of emeralds. And he sent this in. And so any of the buyers that are buying from him can use this. He says, I'm Kennedy Manda, 55 years old and a family man. I have been in the gemstone business, both in mining and as a dealer for 25 years. I had my own mine, rose quartz, in Mukishi. All right, you guys have to excuse my pronunciation. Muchinga province. Also, I am mining rubellite tourmaline in Kepri Moposhi Central Province. All these years, I have been a miner and a dealer for the other gemstones found in Zambia, with all necessary documents from the Ministry of Mines. Gemstone mining and selling is in my blood, and my wish is to see the industry grow. And I will do whatever I can do for the miners to get their benefits. In my journey, gemstones have participated in many international shows, which have benefited me and other miners. The emeralds I bought from the cooperative in Lufwana, the Copperbelt province, and the cooperative consists of more than 100 people. And I think my sale will really help these miners to produce more and improve their standards of living in these hard times. I fairly paid a good price to them, and they are willing to do more business with me. The spessartite I bought from Chama Machinga province from a miner who has lots of workers, and from the looks of things, he keeps the workers well. I would like my contribution to go directly to the workers, and this is possible with the work of the association. The courts I am working with in the association who are on prospecting level. It is a new stone and is part of Zambia, and with my sales, it will help the cooperation funds to do more production. I will give my cooperation lots of help, thus improving their lives and their business, and I will follow all the rules set by our association in payment to the concerned parties. And I would like to thank you people for providing this platform during this COVID-19 times. I will do my best to help others with my business. And he also sent a bio. So any of the buyers can include any of that story of him in their blockchain as it follows their gemstones.
That's amazing. And that is truly something that obviously will transcend time with, you know, the jewelers setting the piece or the gemstone at the end of the day, to be able to carry that story through that came from someone in that supply chain is just really, it's quite beautiful. Yeah, thanks for that, Susan. Charles, should we chat through your initiative in Madagascar?
Yep. So I figured might be good to start just with a little bit of background. Have we got the slides to put up?
I can, if you give me just one moment. Sorry about this. Get all the screen sorted.
Yeah, okay, so we kind of got going in around 2011, and the sort of theory behind it all was that, you know, you can do good business by doing good business. So the more you can put into a community that you're buying from, the better it is for everybody involved, basically. And we sort of started this mostly in Mozambique and a bit around Southeast Asia. Go next slide if you can. That's some of the people who were working with in Madagascar there. Sorry, Mozambique. Then around 2013 is when I met Linda Lawson. Coincidence, completely, no relation to me, just happened to have the exact same last name from a lovely husband standing next to her there. It was around them that we started making the gem kits as well. You can see the first iteration of the very basic gem kit that we were giving out around that time. And with Linda's input, she was doing more around, she was doing a thesis on sort of gender empowerment and that kind of thing in the industry. And we kind of went from there and sort of really started building more, like a more sort of formalized focus on capacity building, specifically targeting women in the industry. Next slide. Around 2015 was the first time I went to Madagascar. Real eye-opener for me. I love it there now. I think I've been there, well, I think I'll be on my 11th trip now. We started doing more formalized teaching then. You can see me there with my good friend Tahiri, that some of you who've watched some of my videos might recognize. And it was around this time that we sort of had the first conception of the responsible gemstone traders, and that sort of style of business. Next slide. In 2016, we started doing some more large-scale projects. So we won a really good project with Tiffany & Co. with the University of Queensland and University of Delaware, and we basically took the sort of smaller, sort of semi-formalized work that we were doing in teaching and produced like a nice book, and we were teaching lots of people. And what was really nice there, again, we were trying to work with women as much as possible, and through the whole lifespan of the teaching, we actually managed to end up with more than 75% total students being women, which was a bit difficult in the beginning with the sort of some of the cultural differences, but once things sort of got rolling, it got a bit easier to actually sort of have like classes as 100% women, which we were really quite happy with to be able to achieve in the end. And we also did a bit of stuff with like the Australian Department of Foreign Affairs and GIZ, which is the big German government organization. Around 2018, 2019, we were part of putting together the Ladies Lapidary Collective in Sakaraha. So this was like a communal place where women could come and learn how to make jewelry, learn how to cut stones. And the members of the collective were actually basically, they were selected from women that had been victims of domestic abuse. So this was a nice way for them to come together in a safe place and learn new skills and basically, upskill and be able to bring in more money into the family by actually working with and adding value to the stones. So we kind of had the beginning where they were learning how to work, well, how to identify the stones, how to grade and value the stones, and now they're learning how to cut them, how to make them into jewelry, all from a safe, nice little compound that had been built for them with help from the Australian government and the German government, actually. And by this point, we'd had the book for the course translated into 4 languages, which is pretty cool. And we also started working on different sides of the trade as well. So we did a bit of engineering. So you can see the one picture down there. We taught them how to build a trommel, which is a basic mining separation piece of machinery, but we built it completely out of recycled material. So it's all paint buckets, all chicken wire. We did a bit of stuff on like brand management, sort of trying to get them to know how to merchandise in the lapidary center and that kind of thing. Yeah, I'm just trying to sort of build them a bit forward even more. Get next slide. And also, I was actually on the trip where we built the trommel that this little incident happened. And this is something that I'm really sort of passionate about at the moment. And this is what I've called the Teacup Collection. We always kind of find that when most sort of buyers, they'll go to the sort of rural areas, or they'll buy a parcel of stones maybe, but something like this where you can see the little teacup here, most people would sort of pass this over. There might be 1 or 2 good stones in there, but nothing really of that value, and they'll usually just pass it over. But I don't know, I was really quite moved, because she was actually one of our students and one of the ladies in the collective, and she came up to me with this little teacup, and I was like, all right, bugger it, I'll buy the whole thing, cup and all, and we'll get the whole thing cut. And if you go to the next slide, you can see what this teacup turned into. So that's the exact contents, stone for stone, that was in that cup. You might have seen in the last slide, there was that big milky one. That's the that sort of cloudy stone to the, so in the sort of top left of the corner, that sort of milky, cheap, worthless piece of quartz. That's the big one in the next slide. So we really just wanted to sort of show that you can see there's beauty where you might not see it before. So now we go back and we buy aspirin bottles of stones, we buy teacups, we buy vitamin capsules full of stones, anything we can, but always buying the complete set of whatever they've got without rejecting anything, because we kind of want to show that there is actually value there. And we sort of feel like, as an industry, we do need to sort of promote these middle grade and low grade stones, because that's usually what the women in the industry get left with. So the more we can do to actually promote these sort of lower grade stones, they're not all perfect, might be a bit milky, might have a few cracks, but there is still beauty there. So this is something that we're really trying to push to decrease the cherry picking a little, and decrease the chances of the women being left with stones that they might be left with for years, or never be able to sell, because everything good's been taken out, and when you're left with the absolute dross, then it's going to become very hard to sell. So this is a concept that we're quite keen to promote as much as we can. And perfect sort of platform for that is something like the blockchain, like the provenance proof blockchain. leading on to the next slide. So in 2020, Clemens was kind enough to lend us some aid via Googlin with a little bit of funding, and we purchased the ladies a laptop and a printer and a camera, and we got them a laminator, and we got them a phone line, because that was something that, as Monica has said, in the same sort of situation where in these rural areas, there's distinct lack of technology. So something as simple as having access to the internet, you know, we take for granted here, but is a very big thing over there. So we had to get them basically the entire setup for the technology to actually be able to get onto the blockchain. That said, I was a little bit kind of dubious at first about how they would take to, you know, being stuck behind a computer, because at the same time we were also doing further training in jewelry making. And I was like, oh, you know, they're all going to want to go over there and work on the jewelry. No one's going to want to sit behind the computer. And I thought maybe we'd get like half a day training and then they'd all go back to the jewelry. After doing a group session with everyone, we had the president of the association and probably the two brightest stars there as well. And they literally sat there for 4.5 days, like 6 hours a day at least, just glued to their computer screens, just soaking in all the information on how to do every single stage of the blockchain. And which is quite impressive. For one, they don't speak French and they don't speak English, and Provenance Proof is in English, and they were still super enthusiastic to keep going with it. We built them a little cheat sheet so they knew how to, you know, they could just like associate that word. They knew what they were just by kind of looking at their little sheet. And yeah, by the end of it, that we had walked them through each of their accounts, because they were the miners, they were the cutters, they were the brokers, they were the jewelers, and they were the retailers. So there was quite a lot for them to learn. So for them to be still enthusiastic about it, right down to the wire before we actually left Sakuraha that time, was really, really, really heartwarming to see that they were actually that into it. One issue that we did have was convincing them of the value of it. And you can see in the picture below there, what we actually did was we knocked up a little template where they could insert the information off Provenance Proof and print it out. This is largely because where they are now, they have basically no access to the international market. So what they're really relying on is local markets and local tourists coming through. Now, for them to be able to print out something like this might cost them, you know, the equivalent of, you know, 5-10 cents, our currency, but they can then sell that for the equivalent of maybe $4 or $5 when they sell a piece of jewelry, or they sell a rough stone or a cut stone. They can now, you know, it's their equivalent of do you want fries with that? They can now say, would you like your Provenance Proof documentation to go with that? And that actually did get them quite excited, because, you know, it's not that much work for them to put it on there, but they can sort of get that little upsell, which is something to kind of keep them motivated to keep putting more stones onto the blockchain. This literally only happened in March this year, so it's still early days yet, but we're quite excited to see how they go with it. And I think we've been starting to receive emails from them, which is another big step, because none of them had ever used the email before. So a lot of Google Translate going on, some interesting translations, but you know, it's again, like with Monica saying, with the computer literacy, with these ladies, it was basically zero. So they've gone from, you know, pre-March this year to never using a computer before, to now sending Google translated emails and uploading multiple accounts of blockchain items onto Provenance Proof. So you know, it is something that actually can work. It takes a bit to get it going, but you know, if we can make it work here, I think we can definitely make it work almost anywhere, really, as long as you've got access to the technological infrastructure. I think that's probably the biggest hurdle at the moment, I would say.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you. Susan, how does that make you, like listening to these stories, how does that make you feel as a not only someone who's quite involved in responsible jewelry, but also making your own jewelry as Susan Wheeler Design. Do you feel this changes the way you approach your designs?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. And I'm actually at a jewelry show right now, in every piece that I made that's new for the show, I would love to put up on the blockchain, because as either I was buying from people who were directly from the mine, or people like, I have an opal that Clemens saw with me in Tucson, and we talked about it, and I had the story written down by the dealer and the miner, and I knew that he was involved in an NGO's program and training in Ethiopia, and will probably continue something through the Virtue Gem program with him in the future. And so when I hear about that and Charles's story, I'm thinking of that for the whole piece, and having that up on the blockchain and the Provenance proof, where I have the story of each person that I've been gathering from the time that I either bought the rough gem or the finished gem, and carrying it through, is something that now I'm talking about consumer front while I'm here at this at the jewelry sale. And if people want to engage and hear about the story of the opal, or in the future the Zambian gems, or the Teacup Collection, I have all of that documentation, and it just brings such a richness to the finished jewelry piece that you can talk about with the end consumer. So I very much am aware now, and have been in the past year or so, and a couple of years, in gathering these stories when I actually am purchasing the gems. And I know adding that in, whether we're adding also stories from the cutters and the biographies, all of this just makes the end piece of jewelry so rich.
Yeah, no, I can sort of really sense that. And obviously, one of the benefits of Provenance Proof is also the ability to add your designs and start to add, the whole process that you go through as a designer and a manufacturer of your own jewelry. You can build that into it so that the end consumer can then experience the whole story and experience how you took that story and then turned it into an item that can be worn as an adornment. So it's really powerful that someone can then have that in their hand or on their computer and view it. I feel like, we're turning a corner, and jewelry's becoming even more empowering.
I think that it goes back to, we've had, as modern jewelry designers, we've had a disconnect in the way that things used to be. I think when the Cartiers and all of the, the high jewelry houses began, they were going and they were buying gems in, large directly, having them cut, and they had beautiful illustrations, and all of that was being documented. But now when we as designers just show up, to Tucson, everything's already finished for us, and we just get, here's your calibrated gem, and I think that you'll like what I've done with it. Well, that's not good enough, Designers want to design everything. We want to have a say in everything. And so now we have the ability to go back to really the heart and soul of what jewelry design began as. And we can do that. And then when we bring in like the stories and the questions that we can ask along the way and that we can have in the blockchain, they're going to be, maybe personal and different to us, what we can dig out and what we can document. And I think that we connect with our end consumer in a personal way. I think all of that it's kind of revolutionary, what we can bring to the table now.
And with the Zambia initiative, obviously, I want to touch on to the Zambia initiative. You've also been able to communicate directly with miners. And is this a new experience for you? Going through that process? Sorry.
Yeah. So, it is, a lot of it is completely new. And the ability to buy the rough and have it cut in country with a custom cut is really completely new. And to buy a large piece and then cut it down and use it in one piece, I haven't had the ability to do that before. In the communicating with the miners, we're really putting a lot, as I said, on Pauline Monday right now. And we're very lucky to be working with the Zambian Federation, because both in the Zambian Federation and the women miners that Pauline is head of, you have a wealth of information So Pauline began as a miner, and now she's, you know, trades for her own gemstone company in Hong Kong. So she's gathering all of these stories, and we're calling her, and, you know, like what we read from Kennedy, and we're saying, do you have information on these miners? And they're sending in their stories, and we're requesting information. And we have some of the people bringing gemstones forward are miners that are then also dealers. And then we also have a lot of women who are just selling their own quartz, their own crystals. So it really, all the stories are very different because we have a variety of people coming to the table with their gems. And the more designers we have in you know, coming internationally, our last sale has been from an Italian designer, a Polish designer. We've had American designers. So we're getting more people coming in, and as they see the sales developing, we have more people in Zambia bringing gemstones forward. We have over 335 gemstones in the program right now.
Wow, that's fantastic. All right, guys, thank you. We're now going to move to some of the questions because there are a few to go through. Question, are the stones physically marked in some way to tie them to the blockchain record? Clemens, are you able to help with that one? Or actually, Monica, from your experience working directly with, obviously, gathering the stones from the ASM experience, you've worked through a couple of systems and processes where obviously you can guarantee that the stone is connected to the blockchain digital fingerprint.
So initially, when we started doing this tagging physically, where we assigned a physical code of the stone from an Excel sheet and hand coded it on the little piece of paper where we seal the stone, and then matched that to the entry on the blockchain, so that then you can match physically the number the blockchain has assigned and the physical stone that has been purchased. We've been to several market days, and we're still testing the best way to tag these stones. We're also looking at a way where, instead of feeding the physical number from the stone into the blockchain, how we can then get the blockchain assigned number onto the physical stone that is been purchased. So there could be better systems like barcoding, but again, because of the infrastructure where we are working, we are not at the ideal. We are still improving and testing the technology to better tag the stones. But what we ensure is the physical stone and the stone that, and what we the entry on the blockchain, there's a direct link, and it's traceable, where you can use the blockchain to identify the actual stone physically that has been bought. Yeah.
Okay. Next question.
I think Clement wants to add something to the tagging.
Sorry, Clemens, go.
Is it okay? I liked very much what Monica said, actually. It's very true, and it's exactly the right approach. So what you do is you kind of like have to do a best way approach, actually, to link the physical good with the digital asset. That's the crucial part, true. But on the other side, you also have to make it feasible, right? You have to, I mean, you cannot go into high tech when there is no high tech available or something. So you have to find the best way. And this can be as simple as some gemological features, actually. They are very characteristic, first of all. So you can take weights, you can take dimensions, you can take color descriptions, and of course, images. Very important to re-recognize a stone. And then you can go into different sealed bags, particles. There are many things. We have many opportunities there to help, actually. And already now, you mentioned barcodes and RFID chips. If that's an option, of course, you can already now connect them with the blockchain, and there are specific fields there. So, but it's exactly right. So you look what is feasible and what is possible to do, and then that is the exact approach. And so far, it worked well. Thank you.
Awesome. Give the web-based nature of the platform, could blockchain data entry within artisanal mining ecosystems benefit from more simple usability formats and learn from examples such as M-Pesa that has taken a fintech product and made it accessible to anyone who has a mobile phone? Who'd like to answer that one?
Let me take that one, Miranda, because this is when we went to site in Tanzania, these are some of the ideas that we wanted to test with Everledger, where the issue was, it was the first time we're going to go directly to artisanal miners, understand the landscape where they work, given the challenges of capacity, infrastructure, language barrier, dynamics of the environment where they operate, and ask ourselves, we are bringing blockchain technology to this environment. How best do we make this technology to be as simple as possible for these artisanal miners and for them to understand the value and to see the benefit, so that for sustainability purposes, even when there's no project, what would spur the miners to continue using this technology moving forth? And that's what we're endeavoring to do as we continue to work with artisanal miners, to ask ourselves, how best do we improve the technology? And that has been my role in the project with Goblin and Everledger in Tanzania, to continuously engage with the artisan and understand what are ways we can tweak the functionalities of the blockchain. How best do we make it user-friendly for the miners? So exactly as Dr. Stacy has asked, is something that we've actually already given back to the project team who are developing, where we've asked ourselves, if not web-based, how else could the data entry be done in a more user-friendly manner? And I'm glad to report that Miranda is our project manager, that as of the next version, when we go to the field, you can actually now download a physical Excel sheet, and you don't need to now have internet, and you can enter data into that physical Excel sheet. And when you go to an environment where there's electricity and there's internet, you can then do an upload into the blockchain. That's one way where we're trying to make it as easy as possible to use. We've also thought about the use of, can it run on a USSD code where it doesn't have to be web-based? How else could the miners enter data? Does it always have to be on a smartphone? So there are still different exciting ways we are trying to continue to improve the technology. I think we needed to start and roll it out so that the data was coming directly from the field to the developing team, and not from the developers to the miners to fit to the technology, but more getting the feedback from the miners to be able to feed into improving how the technology will work. So we are continuously piloting how to make it easier and more user-friendly for the miners, so that they can use it in the long term by themselves without too much help and support. And I think that's the commitment that we would want to get from Goblin and Everledger, to continuously improve the technology to make it more user-friendly, in the long run.
I might just add something there as well. One of the things that we've been talking with our ladies in Sakaraha is trying to move them more into becoming brokers. Like they do still have their own stones as well, but there's a second collective that we work with that Linda actually nicknamed the Ladies in Hats Collective, and they're not directly part of the Ladies Lapidary Collective, but they are sort of associated with them. So we would like for them to be able to kind of use the Lapidary Collective as like a broker for something like provenance proof. So they can go to the collective, and they will basically put it onto the blockchain for them. They can set them up with an account, and they can basically act as the facilitators for getting people onto the blockchain. They're in a slightly unique situation because they have had this center built for them. But for one, it gives the other ladies in the areas and the other collectives and the artisanal miners who wouldn't normally have access to the infrastructure to be able to get it onto provenance proof, it gives them it on there. But then it also gives the ladies, another small income stream, because they can then, just charge a nominal fee for them to be able to actually do the work for them. So it's kind of a win-win situation where you know, once the ladies are turning over enough profit, maybe they can actually buy the stones from them and then sell them on through the Lapidary Collective. If not, they can just sit there and help the people actually just get it on there as an actual service kind of thing. So that was another sort of way that we were thinking of trying to get around that technology barrier.
Okay. We have a fantastic question here. Is if anybody has any stories of how a stone has gone through the blockchain to the end consumer, and how jewelers would be using blockchain and the provenance story in their marketing. Is anyone able to answer that one? I have a few examples, but I would love to hear someone else's thoughts.
I set my first Moyo gem, so I haven't said anything else from the other blockchains, and I'm selling it now at the show. And so that's the first one that I have. And I have gone back and recorded the information that I was given from Moyo through the blockchain. And so we'll see, but I've already told the story about it. The marketing team came by for the store, and I've already told the story about it in the video, and I'm using that to talk about it to the end consumer.
Fantastic. So one of the benefits of the platform, obviously, is that it can capture each stage in the supply chain, and a jeweler or a designer can upload their own designs, their own sketches. They can add all the details around the manufacturing process, like whether it's cast or hand manufactured. And they can also add details around the metals that are used, so that the end story from a consumer's perspective is it's a real succinct, established story of from mine right through to the final piece manufactured. And from a lot of the jewelers that we've worked with in the diamond side of our business, there's a huge selling point there that they're really, really capitalizing on, where they're recognizing that it adds more transparency, but it also adds more substance to their sales pitch. And they're using it generally in store to try and aid as a sales tool. Right. One of the questions. Sorry, did someone else have something to add?
So Miranda, can I say something to Monica? Monica, you asked us to give a commitment actually to continuously listen to people at the base in the supply chain, and to interact and to develop their needs. We can give this commitment to you right away. This is what we have done the last year. This is what we're doing. This is what we're fully committing to. I'd say it belongs to all of us, this initiative. So we do not only want to listen, we have to listen every day. And to actually to even improve that, we do want to formalize it actually in a way that, selected, people who really have experience now with the blockchain, or have experience with applying a part of the blockchain, that they can interact quicker also among each other. And so we want to create a circle of communication. Actually, I think that's a project for the next weeks and months. So definitely this commitment we can give you. Sorry for interrupting.
No, it's perfect. We're nearing the end. I just wanted to obviously thank everyone for participating, and obviously all these fantastic people for listening. Did anybody on the panel have any final notes to talk through?
Miranda, allow me to quickly quip in, actually about the Zambia project that we're doing with Susan.
Yes.
Because the idea was, and I've seen there are questions around that, where Musa is asking, could the blockchain be the platform that could help miners in terms of standardizing and unifying prices of gemstones, which has always been a big industry issue where there's no standard pricing for gemstones, right? And the Zambia project, which we are now testing virtual buying of gems, what has traditionally not happened before. We're actually trying to see whether, given the current situation where people cannot travel, is it possible to buy gemstones virtually? And this is where platforms like the blockchain become very important, because then you need the provenance, you need a surety of the provenance of the stone you're purchasing. You know, and that's what we're also trying to pilot in Zambia, where you will not physically have seen the stone that you're purchasing, but we are going to input this information into the blockchain to give you the certainty of what you get is actually what will have been sourced on the ground, you know. And I think one way in which the blockchain can then become a way to start capacity building the miners in terms of how to sell and present their gemstones to the market is what we brought back to Everledger, to the development team, to say, can we convert the blockchain into a marketplace, whereby if you log in, you can see the stones from Madagascar, you can see the stones from Zambia, you can see the stones from Tanzania, you can see the plethora of everything that artisanal miners want to sell, what are their prices, what are the stories that have been uploaded by these miners, and anybody, any jeweler, any gem dealer will be able to purchase off the gems, off the blockchain. I think to be a fantastic way of capacity building, even for the miners, of how to present the gemstones to the market. It will show them the, you know, the use of provenance and the importance of provenance. It will enable the jewelers to link directly with the miners, which is what we are piloting under responsible sourcing as AJEC. And it will enable us to continue and have a sustainable supply chain, where even when there's a pandemic and people cannot travel, the trade does not stop. People still buy the gemstones, the market continues, and we all are able to, you know, elevate miners' grievances, where they're still trading and they're still able to meet their, you know, basic needs, because the market then has gone virtual. So we are hoping blockchain will also facilitate that, and working with all of us as partners, we can all work to support miners through such initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you. And if anyone is interested in knowing more about Provenance Proof, you can go to provenanceproof.com. Or if you would like to reach out to myself or the team at Everledger, we are everledger.io. And I will, we will take all questions from there. Thank you so much, panelists, and thank you so much, everyone, for listening in.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for hosting us.